Hello YouTubers, welcome to Mesoamerican Vocabulary, some words that will help you understand more about the Mesoamerican cultures prior to the invasion of the Spaniards and the Europeans in general. So we'll be looking at three words today, mainly talking about the Aztecs, but we'll talk about Topiltzin, Tenochtitlan, which is the capital city of the Aztecs, and Chinampas, which were basically floating farmland for the Aztecs. So these will kind of bleed into one another. So let's start with Topiltzin. Topiltzin was actually a Toltec priest who was dedicated to the god Quetzalcoatl. And Quetzalcoatl is an important god not only in Toltec religion, but also as the Aztecs rose to power, we see that Quetzalcoatl became an important part of their pantheon of gods. And indeed, we see that one of the similarities in most Mesoamerican cultures and societies is the idea of polytheistic religion. So Topiltzin was this priest dedicated to Quetzalcoatl. I'll spell both of these on the screen. And Quetzalcoatl, why is this so significant? Because this legend of Quetzalcoatl, this god Quetzalcoatl, became known and associated with priests and the training of priests. And we see very clearly that the Toltec tradition of having priests high up in the political hierarchy was adopted by the Aztecs as well. Their priests, the emperor was seen as divine, and priests were seen as highly important. And we know from discussion and from reading already that the gods and the connection of religion to the Aztecs was very important. So Quetzalcoatl and the legacy of Topiltzin comes into play as we look at Aztec culture as well. So the Aztecs built their capital city in the middle of a lake, and this lake, Lake Texcoco, I believe, although that could be one of the ones right next to it, they set up their capital city, and it was essentially not exactly a floating city, but the lake that they built it on was very shallow and muddy on the bottom, and so building Tenochtitlan, which is basically the capital city of the Aztecs, on this lake was a pretty extraordinary feat in engineering. They had to anchor using wooden poles down into the lake bed, these structures that they were building out in the middle of the lake. Your book has a really good picture of this capital city. Of course, we don't have any more pictures of it now because it's been covered up completely by Mexico City. After the Spaniards came in and built their structures directly basically on top of the old capital city. So the importance of this is it kind of shows how the Aztecs were extraordinarily technologically advanced, considering they didn't have a lot of the same tools that the Europeans had. They were able to engineer this city on top of a lake, which was basically a shallow, muddy lake. They were able to bring in water, fresh water from outside sources using aqueducts, which is something that the Romans had done. We saw that they were able to build huge structures here on top of the lake. The greatest pyramid in the middle of Tenochtitlan was huge and was anchored on top of a lake bed foundation. They built causeways, which are these huge, gigantic roads that go kind of over the lake into the city, and people lived and worked there, and they had these canals, and the Spaniards who found these were very impressed. They likened it to the city of Venice with its great canals in Italy. So Tenochtitlan represented this technological innovation of the Aztecs. Finally, the word Chinampas. Chinampas is kind of important for the economic function of the Aztecs. Farmland directly around the valley that they were living in was not exactly at a premium, and so in order to create farms that were viable or produced goods all year long, they created these basically floating farm beds, garden beds, which could be planted and harvested 5, 6, 7 times a year and provide an excellent food source. And they were fed from the water from the lake from below. So they were these anchored farms, small farms that could feed the people in the city. We know that there was a pretty huge population in the main city, and that these Chinampas were vital as a source of food to feed the people in the Aztec Empire. All right, I'll come back next time and look at some new words. For that, let's just say be awesome for now. Okay.